How's everybody doing out there? My name's John Eberhart, and along with my kids, and when I say kids, they're in their early to mid 40s, so they're not kids, they're adults. They'll always be my kids. We're going to start something called Eberhart Outdoors. I've been getting a lot of requests to do YouTube videos, instructional bow hunting, saddle hunting, scent lock stuff, scent control. Along with my son Joe and John, we're going to start doing that. And I think it's kind of needed. There's a lot of YouTube stuff out there, especially on saddle hunting, that it shows positions and things that you, in my opinion, shouldn't be doing, because I've been hunting out of a saddle since 1981, so 39 seasons, and been successfully using scent lock, paying zero attention to wind since 1999. So basically, this is going to be primarily about bow hunting, but there's going to be segments throughout the years that are going to be fishing or turkey hunting, or fishing and hunting and outdoor activities in general. But the main focus here is going to be on bow hunting for whitetails. And for anybody to believe anything I say, if anybody out there is like me, I don't believe anything anybody says. I don't believe websites of hunting companies or manufacturers until I research and Google what their background is and what other industries it's used in. So if you're anything like me, you want to know if somebody's got the credibility before you listen or believe anything they say. So because of that, I'm going to give a brief bio of myself and then go on a little tangent on hunting pressure. I've been bow hunting in Michigan for 53 seasons, and I have 31 bucks listed in the Michigan record book from 19 different properties in 10 different counties. And I quit gun hunting in 1991. One of those was a state record, by the way, shot in 1981. And 1991, I quit gun hunting, and in 1997, I just got so bored sitting around during gun season, I started researching going out of state. So I started going out of state in 1997, and at this point in time, I've went on 23 out-of-state trips. I've taken 19 Pope and Young bucks. At least three of the four trips that I didn't kill a P&Y, I could have, but I had higher standards. I was looking for something bigger and ended up with nothing. So hunting out of state's a lot different because it's a lot lighter hunting pressure. And probably what separates what I do from the probably thousands of other deer hunters, bow hunters that have may have many, many bucks in the record book, like all the TV guys do, is everything I've killed has been on either public property or knock on doors for free permission property. I've never owned any property, never hunted on family property. I've never leased any property. I've never hunted any city property with special permits, or suburban property, that's very, very difficult to access because there's lots of big bucks running around and nobody hunts them. To have an cumulative total of 50 record book bucks, 31 Michigan, 19 out of state, I don't think any other bow hunter in the country can make that claim, to have 50 bucks in the record book, hunting strictly public land and knock on doors for free permission properties. Also, my son Chris and I, and he's in Germany, he lives in Germany now, we wrote 3 books: Bow Hunting Pressured Whitetails, Precision Bow Hunting, and Bow Hunting Whitetails the Eberhart Way. And they've been really good sellers, and they've been targeted at hunting deer in heavily pressured areas, because primarily I've hunted in Michigan all of the years I've been bow hunting, and Michigan is the most heavily bow hunted state in the country. We have over 320,000 bow hunters. Next closest state would probably be Pennsylvania, and then maybe Ohio, but basically all the states in the Northeast, because there's so many. The general population of the states is so high, there's a lot of bow hunters. So you get out west, and there's a lot fewer bow hunters because there's a lot lower general population of the states. So you get up in the Northeast, there's just a lot of bow hunting pressure. In the books, for instance, we do a lot of stats, and the stats that we do are for every state. So we have like Pope and Young entry ratios per amount of bow license sales, and we do hunter densities. So that's basically taking bow hunter license sales and dividing it in the absolute land mass of the state. And to give you a kind of an idea of the difference in properties and how hunting properties are so lopsided, is in Kansas, statistically, every bow hunter has 3,200 acres that they can hunt. In other words, if you took their bow hunter license sales and divided it into the absolute landmass of the state, it'd be 3,200 acres per licensed bow hunters. In Michigan, our stats are every bow hunter has about 40 acres to hunt. And that's just landmass stats. So if you take the city of Detroit out of it, and you take the UP out of that landmass, and Flint and Grand Rapids and all the big cities in Michigan where there's no hunting, it'd probably be one bow hunter per 30 acres. I know when you go down into Zone 3, which is where most of the population of the state is in southern Michigan, it's not uncommon to have 30 to 40 bow hunters in a section. Not uncommon at all. I hunted one section for quite a few years, and there was always at least 30 bow hunters in the section on opening day, and probably twice that amount of gun hunters on opening day of gun season. So hunting pressure makes a big difference. In my personal opinion, hunting pressure is the biggest criteria in trying to kill mature bucks, period. Nothing outweighs hunting pressure. You watch some of these TV shows, and it's not to be a knock on the TV guys, they're entertainers, but they're killing bucks on properties and big leases or farms that they own or pay to hunt ranches where there's literally no competitive hunting pressure. And even if there is competitive hunting pressure, like on pay to hunts, they do oftentimes have quite a few hunters. There's always kill criteria. So when you have a kill criteria or an age criteria of 3.5 years or 4.5 years old, or a 150-inch buck, I don't know how many times I've watched some TV shows and a 150-inch buck walks by them, and well, that's not big enough, we'll wait another year. That'd be the buck of a lifetime in a lot of other places. So those guys hunt properties that they're just micromanaged, like deer farming, just like a cattle rancher, in my opinion. And anytime you have kill criteria, it really doesn't matter how many hunters you have. A lot of deer are going to grow to maturity because they don't get shot at when they pass by hunters when they're 1.5 years old or 2.5 years old or sometimes 3.5 years old. So it's not just simply the lack of hunters on the property. Even if there are a lot of hunters on the property, the criteria make a big difference in what those hunters shoot. And so a lot of deer grow to maturity. And anytime you have an area where there's a lot of deer that grow to maturity, obviously the numbers are higher, mature buck numbers are higher, and they're a lot easier to kill. And when they pass by hunters while they're growing to maturity, they obviously have a lot more tolerance for human activity. They tolerate human odor. They tolerate humans being on the property. The rut is extremely competitive. When you rattle antlers, when I go out to Kansas and I rattle antlers 50% of the time, something comes in. May not be a shooter, but something is going to reply. In Michigan, if I have one response rattling antlers during an entire season, that's a lot. That's a lot. So the rut competitive, with that many mature bucks and the rut being that competitive for breeding rights, all tactics work. Decoys, rattling, grunt calls, doe bleats, just everything works, mock scrapes. So it's just a different game when you're hunting managed properties or lightly hunted areas like the TV guys do. And oftentimes, in my personal opinion, somebody's trophy room is not really a true example of their hunting skill set. Because I know lots of guys watching that are going to be watching these videos that we're going to do in the near future. Lots of those guys could go hunt on some of these TV guys' properties. I'm not going to name any names, but in my opinion, I know some TV guys that are from Michigan or have hunted in Michigan and never killed a 100-inch buck, and they're killing 150, 60, 70 inchers out of state. Where they're hunting, because almost all the TV guys are hunting on micromanaged properties, big leases, farms, Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska. places where there's just not a lot of hunting pressure, so they have no competition. So the terminology 100% free ranging, 100% wild, while those statements may be true because it's not a high fence, it's not an enclosure, it's very similar. It's very similar to hunting in enclosure because there's just so many mature bucks on the property. It's just by the sheer numbers, they're going to kill something. And a lot of people watching this right now could do the same thing on the same properties. You notice there's been TV guys that have had hunting challenges and stuff, but they never let those guys hunt on their property where they hunt because it might make them look bad. So, a lot of people want to replicate what the TV guys are doing, even though the TV guys are hunting managed properties or very lightly hunted states, and assume that those tactics they're doing are going to work, on the pressured properties they're hunting. If you're hunting public land in Pennsylvania, Virginia, New York, Michigan, the tactics that those guys are using, those aggressive tactics, just won't work. You can't take two big sets of antlers and crash them together. All you're going to do is scare deer in a place like I just mentioned, because those deer don't hear that. It just doesn't happen. You just don't have 250-inch bucks fighting. You might have a couple of 80 or 90-inch bucks fighting once in a while, but you just don't hear that big aggressive, mature bucks fighting and things like that. So, if you're a guy hunting public land in a state like PA, Virginia, New York, Michigan, up in the Massachusetts, and you're killing 2.5-year-old bucks on a consistently regular basis, you're a badass hunter. You're really, really good, and you're probably as good as most hunters in the country. You're probably as good as guys that are in Iowa that are killing 140, 50 inches every year. It's just because your opportunities are less. When you have huge amounts of hunting pressure, most of those hunters are targeting any legal antlered bucks. So there's not a whole lot of bucks that live to 2.5, and the number that live to 3.5 and older are really, really small. In fact, a lot of areas in Michigan, our DNR, they claim that less than 1% of the bucks are 3.5 years and older. So that's 1 out of 100. So if you took 5 sections, which is a little over 3,000 acres, and if there was 100 bucks on those 3,000 acres, only one of them statistically would be a 3.5-year-old or older buck. Now that's pretty bad odds, and there's a lot of places in the state that are like that, especially up in northern Michigan, and there's lots of places in other states that are exactly the same. So don't be fooled by listening or watching a lot of that stuff, because while it's interesting and everybody likes to see the big antlers, it's not a true indication of what you, if you're hunting pressured property, should do. And to give you an example, you could take a novice fisherman, somebody that could barely cast and retrieve a fishing line, and you could put him on somebody's farm pond behind the barn that never gets fished, but it's got bass in it, and he could probably catch quite a few bass in one day, because the pond never gets fished and the fish aren't used to seeing lures. They're not getting caught and released. So you take that same guy, you put him on a public lake that has some local tournaments and a lot of public fishing activity, he may struggle to catch one legal bass. And as far as the TV guys, when it comes to like land and how lopsided the properties are, you look at sports icons. This is a really good explanation, in my opinion. If you take guys like Phil Mickelson, LeBron James, Michael Phelps, Mickey Mantle in his day, Tom Brady, you take all those icons of the professional sports, and you got to keep in mind, those guys have played that sport probably all their life, and they played it in middle school, then they played in high school. If they were good enough in high school, then they went on to college. And if they were good enough in college, they got drafted into the pros. Obviously, golf, you don't get drafted. A lot of sports, you don't. But then when they played in the pros, they had to outperform all of the other professionals to become an icon of that actual sport. And the really interesting thing about that is they did it all on the same fields, swimming pools. Michael Phelps swam in the same pools as everybody else. Mickelson competed on the same golf courses as everybody else. Tom Brady competes on the same football field, and LeBron James on the same basketball court, and so on and so on. So they reached the pinnacle of their sport by outperforming everybody on the same exact playing field. And in deer hunting, that is not the case. Some people stuck on public land, for them to have an opportunity to 2.5 or 3.5 year old buck every year is a big deal. Guys out in Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, not knocking those states, they're phenomenal states, but they get opportunities of bucks like that all the time. Their criteria are going to be maybe 140 inches before they lift their bow off the hook, where in PA or West Virginia or Virginia, an 80-inch, 14-inch wide 8-point's going to be something that is a trophy for them, because that may be the biggest deer on the property or in the area, or one of the biggest ones. So public land hunting became very popular. I think the hunting public has done a great thing by the shows they're doing, the videos they're doing. They're making those guys that are killing 2.5-year-old bucks on public land feel like, hey, you know what? I've done something. Prior to the last few years, it just seems like, if you didn't kill a 125-inch deer, you don't even show a picture to your buddy or anything. It's just, they just make fun of you. So, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an analogy that's not about me. I have a good friend. I'm not going to say his last name, but his name is Ed, and he owns 40 acres in northern Michigan. And he's hunted that property for 41 years. At the time that I actually wrote this down for seminars, he had hunted it 41 years, and he had taken 68 bucks off that property, and the biggest buck was 110 inches. So in 41 seasons on his own 40 acres, he'd never killed a Pope and Young buck. Then I started talking to him, and he started going out of state like I did. He went later than me because I kind of talked him into it. And he started going to Iowa and Illinois during Michigan's gun season or during the pre-rut. And in 14 trips, and these are 1-week trips, and he went by himself, and then again, all public or knock on doors for free permission properties. On 14 trips, he killed 12 bucks. Smallest one was 117, the largest one was 168. So on 14 1-week hunts out of state, he shot 12 bucks between 117 and 168. And in 41 years on his own property, he shot 68 bucks, and none of them were over 110 inches. None of them were as big as the smallest one he got out of state. And I've got another good friend, Dave, and he's a phenomenal hunter, and he's followed my books and stuff for quite a few years. He's hunting out of a saddle, and since he started hunting out of a saddle and using scent lock, he pays no attention to the wind either. He's never shot a Pope and Young buck in Michigan in over 20 years of bow hunting. In fact, it's probably more like 30 years of bow hunting. And in the last 2 trips he went to Iowa on just a DIY, do-it-yourself hunt by himself, he shot a 158-incher and he shot a 171-inch 10-point. So, and both of those were on the very first evening he was there, and both of them were on public land. So Dave's just a badass hunter. I mean, he just knows what to do. He knows what to look for because he's hunted in Michigan. He knows how to hunt pressured deer. And if you're somewhat decent at shooting pressured bucks that are 2.5 or occasional 3.5, you can go any place in the country and kill big bucks. It's just what your personal criteria is. So I hope over the next few years you guys enjoy what we're going to bring out. It's going to be kind of different, I think, than what everybody else has to offer. I'm going to throw realism into everything. There's a lot of saddle videos out there that are just, in my opinion, BS. And there's a lot of stuff on activated carbon that's BS. And, a lot of people have bought activated carbon line suits and they didn't know how to take care of it or what to use in conjunction with it, and they get winded, so they blame it on the suit, not their preparation. So anyway, I hope I'm not going on here too long, but it's going to be Eberhart Outdoors. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to also be serious, and it's going to be designed to teach people how to be better bow hunters, how to take advantage of the situations that they have. And I hope you all watch.